It was afternoon on the 24th of May 1964. Under the blistering heat of the Peruvian sun, two giants of South American football faced each other down. Peru were playing Argentina in the qualifying rounds of the Tokyo Olympics. The Peruvians were playing at home at the Lima National Stadium, and their fans had turned out in great numbers to support their national team. The stadium was at a bustling capacity with 53,000 people in attendance. While the match was undoubtedly important to the Peruvian supporters, an ill-fated decision by the referee and an ensuing pitch invasion by the fans was about to significantly raise the stakes. The tragic events that followed would result in the deaths of at least 328 people and would be forever etched into football history, a tragedy that would become known as the Estadio Nacional disaster. When the under-20 teams of Argentina and Peru met that ill-fated day, there was more than just national pride on the line. A win here for either team meant a step closer to achieving their dream of qualifying for the upcoming Tokyo Olympics. Argentina had ranking on their side. For Peru, however, they needed this victory, and a following one against Brazil in order to get there. Half an hour before kickoff and fans began to descend on the stadium en masse. The Lima National Stadium could safely contain 47,000 fans. Unfortunately, due to the organizers printing and selling a far greater surplus of tickets, 53,000 fans were now in attendance, packing out the stadium to a seriously dangerous breaking point. The first half of the match ended 0-0, with fans getting restless at the lack of goals with the tense back and forth between both teams. Everyone was eager to celebrate the victory and the move towards qualification in the streets of Lima. 5% of the country's entire national populace was attending the match, and tensions were at a fever pitch. A tie here would have cast huge doubt over the successful route to the Olympics. A loss would have meant an end to those hopes entirely. With 15 minutes left to play, the Argentine Néstor Manfredi provided a crushing blow to the Peruvian home team in the form of a late goal. For the 53,000 in attendance, this was likely a signal for the end of their Olympic aspirations. Morale was low and frustration was brewing more and more as the final whistle approached. But with 6 minutes left in normal play, the Peruvians were provided with a lightning bolt of hope. Victor Lobaton, a striker for Peru, let fly with a well-angled rebound shot on goal, managing to beat the Argentine keeper and send the ball searing into the back of the net. A torrent of celebration rang out amongst the crowd, a deafening elation as frustration turned into excited optimism. The Peruvian players in their white jerseys embraced on the pitch below. Just as they began to make their way back into their half of the pitch, the Uruguayan referee Angel Eduardo Pazos raised his right arm and right leg, mimicking a goose step. It was the signal that the goal had been disallowed, and the catalyst, the spark, for the tragedy that was about to occur. With the disallowing of the goal, the Peruvian fans knew their Olympic hopes lay in ruin, and previous frustration moved almost instantly into unbridled anger. The referee had decided that Lobaton's goal had been the product of a foul he'd made. As the Argentinian defenders attempted to clear the ball, the southern stand of the stadium was notably chaotic and quickly threatened to turn into a full-blown riot. This was likely due to the stand's popularity, with fans causing it to be the most overpopulated point in the structure. Amidst the chaos, a man leapt out of the stands and onto the pitch, charging towards the referee. The man was none other than Victor Melasio Campos, a well-known criminal that most locally referred to as El Negro Bomba. He had managed to climb over the fences that separated the stands from the pitch, and was well on his way towards the Uruguayan official when the police on duty spotted him. As soon as they saw his silhouette crossing onto the pitch, they let dogs loose to chase him down and quickly managed to tackle him to the ground. Once they had him laid out on the ground, they beat him savagely with batons. The local police force had a reputation for brutality, and so this was all too common at the time. The anger of the fans had, up until this point, been directed entirely at the referee. With the violent beating of Campos, however, the rage of the crowd shifted towards the police that surrounded the pitch. They began yelling and whistling, threatening the police below them, before escalating to throwing whatever they had at their disposal. The referee, seeing that things were only going from bad to worse, acted quickly and blew his whistle, signaling the end of the match. Together with the players of the two national teams, he made quickly for the relative safety of the dressing rooms and away from the rising anger of the crowd. The next day he would tell the press, "I ordered the match to be closed because I knew continuing play could be dangerous." While it's true that continuing play could have been dangerous, the referee's decision to end the match would prove to be disastrous. Once the match's participants had cleared the field, the conflict was now concentrated squarely between the 100 police officers and nearly 60,000 enraged fans. At that time, the Peruvian police were renowned for their brutality. It was the product of a nation constantly living under the heel of military dictatorship and violent regime change. A nation that only that year had begun to undergo a short season of democracy, but one that was still very much struggling to leave its violent past behind. The ranking officer among them made contact with his central office and was given the order to tear gas the crowd. He wasted no time, instructing his men to launch tear gas grenades towards the most agitated sectors of the stands, and from that moment, all hell broke loose. Through the agony and panic of the asphyxiating gases, people searched desperately for escape routes. Many climbed higher into the bleachers, trying to get above the tide of noxious gas to somewhere more breathable. But even at the highest points of the stadium, they were unable to find any refuge from the police's assault. A larger portion of the crowd had rushed for the stadium's exit tunnel. A bitter surprise waited in store for them, however, as they realized upon reaching it that the doors had been barred. They were trapped in. The authorities had decided to close it, fearful that others from outside may join in the fray, compounding an already deadly situation that they themselves had caused by selling surplus tickets. Those first to arrive at the gates were among the worst affected, as the surging crowd filled in behind them, crushing them against the closed exit. A mad charge of terrified people in search of escape, tripping over each other and stampeding those that fell. Dominated by panic and blind survival instinct, the scene was all smoke and hell and writhing terrified bodies. Many were suffocated in the huge crowd, choking on tear gas and the surrounding mass of people. Many more were trampled in the heaving chaos. At first, the reporters present in the stands did not comprehend the full measure of the catastrophe. The first news from the match only mentioned that some people had been injured. Following the initial report, however, the radio would provide minute-by-minute updates, and quickly the press were estimating that at least 50 people had been killed. As people managed to escape the chaos of the stadium, the tragedies continued to mount. Many of the angry young men that had escaped began to organize into guerrilla groups, targeting the police and vandalizing the surrounding area. 3 policemen were captured and lynched, hundreds of cars were destroyed, and the local Goodyear factory was ransacked during a series of riots. Only much later in the night would the police manage to restore a semblance of order in the streets of Lima. The following day, corpses continued to be found as emergency services attempted to gauge a final death toll. After extensive recovery, they estimated the number to be 328 deaths total, with roughly 4,000 injured citizens beyond that. The actual number of dead may be higher, but there were 328 confirmed legally. The government, under the crushing pressure of the military, were forced to declare a state of emergency and the suspension of constitutional freedoms for a period of 30 days. The Estadio Nacional Stadium was closed to carry out repairs, but also in an attempt to try and find meaning in those hours and days following the tragedy. It was a vain undertaking. Pain and sadness would mark it for a long time to come, and fill the souls of those who witnessed the disaster and those who lost family and friends as a result of it. Many of the riot's instigators, like El Negro Bomba, were caught and punished, although it is impossible for such a situation to be laid out on any one particular person. In the time following the tragedy, the referee would come out and go back on his decision at the time, admitting that disallowing the goal was a mistake. In order to properly understand this tragedy, one must not resort exclusively to motivations relating to soccer. There are many intertwining factors that resulted in this occurring. The human error of having the stadium access gates closed, the fanatic and dangerous behavior of heavily intoxicated fans, and the ill-advised and brutal police measures all combined to create the harrowing events that occurred that day. Nevertheless, the 328 fatalities that day do represent the largest number of deaths ever recorded during a football event, a black mark on the beautiful game, something that will hopefully forever be known as football's worst tragedy.